All right, everybody. Um, all right, then I'll knock out a live stream right quick. You know, knock out a live stream right quick. So, I'm gonna talk about the NBA first. Then I'll talk the whole Gary Russell Jr., Devin Haney, saga, and then maybe I'll talk NFL. Get that out the way because at the end of the day, it is called Town Business Sports and Entertainment. So this is primarily a sports channel with some other stuff. So, I try to go a lot of different directions. So, it is what it is. All right. All right. So let me begin with the NBA. All right. So the Clippers just completely let that game get away from them. It looked like they was in cruise control. They was going to win this game by wide margin, but you got to give all the credit in the world to the Denver Nuggets. They fought. They got back in the game. Millsap got it going, and then the center, he made some big shots. They played solid defense for a team that's not really that good on defense. Well, they played enough defense and made enough shots to get back in that game, take the lead, and win it and force a game 6. Now, I'm gonna be completely honest with you. If the Clippers lose game 6, they don't deserve to win game 7. Because to be honest with you, they have no business. They had no business losing that game. And this is what make you weary of the Clippers. And they had this type of problem all year long where they have a stretch where they break off 2, 3, in a row and they look like they clearly the best team in basketball. And then all of a sudden they have a hiccup game and they lose games they shouldn't lose. And then you look at Kawhi 1 minute, Kawhi looked like he on his way to becoming a top 5 NBA player, period. Then he have these kind of games. So, I'm just keeping it 100. Oh, what's up, man? So, the Clippers, they are at the end of the day, they are a intriguing team, but then sometimes you just scratch your head like, okay, what the hell happened? And I'm just gonna be one to say it. If they lose game 6, they don't deserve to they don't deserve to win game 7. I'm not gonna say I hope they lose, but I'm just saying they don't deserve to win game 7 because this series should be over. It should have ended today. And the question was asked in a video I put out earlier. Did the Clippers blow this game or did Denver win this game? And I'll say that Denver won this game. I think the Clippers got a little lackadaisical. I think they got a little lazy. I think they thought this was one of these games where Denver was going to go in there and submit. And boy, was they wrong. Now, I think game 6, I think the Clippers will more than likely be all business. And I think this series should and will end in 6 games. Now, if I'm not mistaken, the Lakers play today. Will Houston have enough guts to at least try to win tonight's game, or will they just surrender and let the Lakers end this in 5? Hey, what's going on, J Dog? So that's the question. Will the Clippers, excuse me, will the Rockets submit? Will they surrender? At the end of the day, you just look at Russell Westbrook, you look at James Harden. I really think when they lose this series, they are going to lose this series. I think they should consider blowing up this team. I really do. I think they should consider trying to get rid of both Harden and Westbrook. If I'm gonna be honest with you, I'm gonna keep it 100. If it was a if it was a way they can get this done, I would send both of them in a package deal to Charlotte. I'm serious. At least with those two guys there, eventually when they start having a live audience and when they start having crowds, at least they'll be able to sell tickets. I would package both of them. And I think it's just time for Houston to blow up that team. Now, can they get rid of those salaries? Well, we'll see. I mean, James Harden signed for that salary like years ago. Russell Westbrook, I think, would be entering his fourth year into that contract. He's already been traded. So I think Russell Westbrook is gonna make, I think, 30 million this year. James Harden is gonna make something like that too. So it would free up it would free up salary. I just think Houston should start over again. Like I said, you just can't win with that lineup. You just can't win playing small ball. You can't win no championship playing Eric Gordon, a 6'3", 6'4" dude at best at small forward. He's clearly undersized. Now I know it worked in New York with Latrell Sprewell, but Latrell Sprewell was like 6'5.5", and he had long arms, and he could jump through the roof, and he was quick, and he was a good defender. But you look at Eric Gordon, he's just you know that ain't no long-term solution, and that ain't no position you should be playing, especially playing 40 minutes and you know just playing against bigger dudes, because that's gonna take toll on you. So it's just not a long-term solution. So you just look at Houston, that lineup is just too small. They really don't have no height, and that's their problem. They don't have no height. We just got to keep it 100. All right, now getting to the Celtics versus the Raptors. At the end of the day, the NBA, I think one of their biggest problems, and I'm gonna keep saying this, they just don't like diversity as far as matchups going, teams going to the finals and going deep in the playoffs. They want certain teams, competing for a championship every year. They like parity. Okay, they don't like diversity, they like parity. They want certain teams. On the East, they okay with it being the Heat or the Celtics. They praying that the Knicks could get it together, and possibly Brooklyn. I think they'll be okay with Brooklyn because it's still a New York borough team. So I think they okay with that. But they don't want to see no teams like Milwaukee. What's going on? They don't want to see no teams like Milwaukee and or in Indiana, because they already went there, done it. They care about ratings, and they care about jersey sales. They feel like small market teams don't translate to big ratings and sales. Well, I beg to differ. They just got the wrong people working in their marketing, because at the end of the day, the NFL, which I give them credit, they don't give a damn who go to the Super Bowl, because it always leads to big ratings. People gonna watch it anyway. You know, but the problem is, once again, with the NBA, they have this thing, they have salary cap restrictions and all that. But I do think that they should put in the next collective bargaining agreement that teams in smaller markets should have a higher salary cap, to where they could pay more to players versus a big market team, to keep them in certain areas. And maybe the NBA should offer to pay into those salaries too. Because at the end of the day, you do want superstars playing in certain places. But then, every superstar, they want to either play somewhere in California or New York or Florida. Now, the thing is, with Chicago, the Chicago Bulls, they don't want to pay anybody. They just cheap. Jerry Reinsdorf is historically cheap, and everybody knows that. They don't want to pay nobody. The Bulls are cheap. So you could get people to come to Chicago, but you ain't going to get paid. And when it's time to pay you, they gonna sign you to a big contract and then they gonna ship your ass out after 1 or 2 years. So that's the problem. The NBA need to fix that. That's why the NFL is still the most popular sport, because as far as marketing goes, they know how they got it on lock. That's just fact. And we all know the NFL, how they feel about, certain groups of people. What's up? We all know how the NFL feel about certain groups of people. So, but at the end of the day, as far as the marketing and advertisement go, they got that they got it on lock. And I think the NBA need to take a page out of the NFL book as far as promoting small market teams or promoting the NBA as an all around sport. Because the problem with the NBA, they market certain teams, where the NFL market the NFL. See, the NBA, they want to market certain teams, like I said, the teams I just named. To a certain degree, they really didn't like the success of the Spurs. Because if you look at the history of the Spurs, even though the Spurs was a damn good team, they had some of the lowest ratings when it came to NBA finals, because they was too, what you would call, too blue collar. So at the end of the day, when they say they don't like guys like Allen Iverson, they loved Allen Iverson. Allen Iverson made the NBA billions of dollars. Every time Allen Iverson went on the road, he sold out arenas. And I know he don't get credit for it, but Allen Iverson had an impact on the NBA, and they don't give him credit for it. So, it is what it is. And you can add Philadelphia to the equation too, but once again, they don't know how to put together a team, and they don't know how to keep a team long term, because I know that Elton Brand said that he wasn't going to move, Joe Embiid or Ben Simmons, but it's looking like he gonna move one of them. And this is fact. So usually when the dudes say he ain't gonna trade nobody, that means he gonna try to trade them. The same thing with Giannis when he say, well, he's staying in Milwaukee. More than likely he may be leaving Milwaukee, but we'll know in a few months. If he doesn't sign his extension, his long-term extension, then you guys should start talking about where Giannis will be playing after the 2020-21 season. So, it is what it is. But at the end of the day, as far as the overall playoffs go, the bubble has been cool. I know some people don't like it, but I like it. It's been cool. You still have got some good basketball for the most part. Because at the end of the day, it's really no pressure for the teams that's, the lower seeds to win, because once again, they're not playing at home. Like I said, it's an even playing field. Every game is a home game or a away game, however you want to look at it. So, like I said, me myself, I've been cool with it. All good. All right. So, before anybody asks what's my opinion on it, I'm gonna talk about the whole Gary Russell Jr., Devin Haney situation. As I said before, it's funny that you got people talking about, what's going on a little bit behind the scenes. Like I said, I'm still waiting to hear from Batman. Like I said, I'm waiting. I reached out to him. I told him to get in contact with me. But as you can see today, I had to, I had to get some stuff off my chest, because I seen the politics that was going on. But at the end of the day, I've been saying this for the longest. Now all of a sudden people want to make videos talking about what's going on behind the scenes. And it just appears that Al Heyman messed up the fight, which I already knew that was going to happen. I've been trying to tell you this about Al Heyman for the longest. I keep trying to tell you it was other people that tried to make it look like Al Heyman was some black messiah that was down for the black community and he loved black people. That's been a con. And then all this stuff that's coming out, I heard the video K Ho put out, and shout out to K Ho. I ain't got no issues with K Ho, but I'm cool with K Ho. There's no issues between me and K Hope. I know K Hope don't get along with other people, and I know well, it's more that people got issues with him. Cause at the end of the day, K Hope is a solid dude. K Hope don't even be thinking about people. He just like me. When you see me, we can talk about it then, you know. But they tried to make a fight. They tried to make a fight. The money was there, and then once again, it got intervened. And I'm just gonna tell y'all, stop listening to these PBC niggas that be talking this shit about they own boss, they do what they want and all that type of shit. It's a smokescreen. Because if that was the case, the contract would have got signed, we would have had a date. So stop listening to these niggas that's talking all that shit about I'm my own boss, I work for me. No, you don't. And I've been trying to tell y'all that. I said all this stuff last year that this was going on behind the scenes. And once again, it's not up to me to talk about what's going on with another person. It's up to the Russells to tell people what's really going on behind the scenes. It's not up to me. It's up to them. And I've been saying this, but you had people looking at me sideways, people accusing me of being a coon and a top ranked nut hugger and all that type of shit. Is you serious? When I've been consistent with the stuff that I talked about on my channel for the last 5 years, is you out of your damn mind. But I told y'all this. I told y'all this. I told y'all this. Nobody wanted to hear it. I told y'all this was going on. And like I said, Al didn't prevented other fights from happening. Because one, Al don't want to do business with nobody else. And then he don't want to, for real. He don't want anybody that he working with to lose to somebody from another promotional company. Because Batman already had told anyway. When I was on H Money's channel, when I asked him that question, when I said, how come you guys can't get together and do a joint pay-per-view streaming fight? Where basically y'all split the proceeds. Y'all can go fight somewhere with a live audience, and y'all can do pay-per-view, and then you know what I'm saying, to where y'all can get a percentage of the gate money, y'all can get a percentage of the pay-per-view money. He said, well, it can be done, but people don't want to do it. So that basically verified me once again what I've been telling y'all. Like I said, I ain't got to sit up here and try to talk around situations and use a whole bunch of fancy fucking words to get to my point. I got straight to the point. I told y'all this was going on. Stop listening to these dudes talking about I'm my own boss and all that type of shit. Because like I said, and I know Bud is unpopular, but I gotta keep. Like I said, I told you the Bud shit was cap, and I told you that it was no way that they was gonna make no fight, and send. It was no way they was gonna make a fight with Bud versus Gary Russell Jr. Because anybody with common sense know how that fight's in. Gary Russell Jr. would get beat up really bad, and I mean really bad. Say what you want to say, Bud then stopped everybody at 147. You can sit up there and try to dismiss what he's done at 147 all you want. But like I said, at the end of the day, nobody ain't lining up to fight Bud. Now all of a sudden they calling Bud's name because it's popular and his name is ringing. That's basically what's going on. Well, I've been trying to say that, Craig, but like I said, I was told I was told, and asked not to go in and keep my mouth shut and all that shit, man. But I ain't doing that shit. Because at the end of the day, y'all deserve to know the truth. Like I say, Al Heyman ain't no pro-black. Power to the people. Hotep, he a businessman. Look at Al Heyman's history. Look at Gary Russell Jr.'s history. Look who Gary Russell Jr. then fought the past couple of years. Man, fighting once a year. Not because he's not healthy. I don't know what the hell didn't happen with Al Heyman and Gary Russell Jr. But it's just fact that it is something that is some bad blood between Gary Russell Jr. and Al Heyman. I know more than what I'm saying, but once again, they got to come out and tell y'all what's going on. I know exactly what's going on, but it's up to them. But I've been saying this stuff. You didn't have Leo Santa Cruz get protected from basically everybody. Okay. Now keep in mind, I was the only one talking about Gary Russell Jr. because I told the truth. Gary Russell Jr. and Demetrius Andrade are in horrible positions. Yeah, that's just fact. Like I said, Leo Santa Cruz been protected from every black fighter that Al Heyman think could beat him. So he finally he giving him the Tank. And I wouldn't be surprised if they tell Tank not to knock Leo Santa Cruz out. That they just tell Tank to just, even if he hurt Leo, to just carry him and don't knock him out. And then you got to ask yourself something. When this PBC stuff was first, I'm just presenting the facts. Because like I said, I don't give a damn who get mad. I don't give a damn about none of these PBC nut huggers. Keep in mind when PBC was first presented to us, what, 4 years ago, 2016, 2015, didn't they say they was all about providing free fights? Isn't this what they told us, that they all about providing free fights, putting major fights on regular TV? But now, and this is, and don't try to use the pandemic as an excuse, because they've been having pay-per-views. Okay. Now, why all of a sudden everything, all the big fights is going to pay-per-view? Errol Spence versus Danny Garcia going to pay-per-view. Charlo brothers going to pay-per-view. Manny Pacquiao, both of his fights been on pay-per-view. And this is before the pandemic. This is what was told to us. If you look at PBC when it was first presented, this is what they said. I'm just keeping it 100. Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury, pay-per-view. Deontay Wilder, Tyson Fury 2, pay-per-view. This is what was told to us. They pretty much then did the same thing that Top Rank was doing when Top Rank didn't want to make outside fights. When Top Rank was keeping everything in-house. But we had an issue with Bob Arum doing that to us. And I'm not fucking defending Bob Arum, but Al Heyman is doing the same exact thing. Why can't people keep it 100? Like I said before, I ain't following nobody's script. Nobody can answer that question. What's the matter? Cat got your tongue? Don't everybody speak at once. This what was told to us. They didn't have several PBC didn't have several pay-per-views. It was all cap. Basically what they wanted to do was like get these fights put on regular TV for the time being, and then when they got the type of deal, pay for these fights to be on, pay for airtime and pay for these fights to be on regular TV. And then when they cut the deal with Fox, then they was gonna start putting all this shit on pay-per-view. And that was the plan all along. So I'm just saying, ladies and gentlemen, you guys been deceived. Like I told you. Like I told you. They don't want to give like all they belt holders, they don't want them to go whatever, quote unquote, across the street and put themselves in a position to where one promotional company have more belts than the other. I'm just telling y'all the truth. People don't want to hear this shit. I'm just telling y'all the truth. You've seen what happened with Devin Haney. And I knew Al Heyman was going to fuck up the fight. And I'm going to tell you another reason why this fight ain't going to come to fruition. Because here's, like I said, for one reason they don't like the idea of a fight getting negotiated basically through the media. And I do think people thought it was a publicity stunt at first, but then when contracts got sent, it was like, oh, nah, we can't allow that. I said this on several occasions. If Gary Russell Jr., from what I heard, Gary Russell Jr. tried to go elsewhere and he was prevented from going elsewhere. If Gary Russell Jr. was a top ranked fighter, I'm just keeping it 100. He would have got bigger fights. Gary Russell Jr. should be a pound for pound superstar in boxing. But his career has been stagnant due to behind the scenes shit. And people don't want to be honest and tell the truth. But they all about trying to put up this smoke screen that it's just the white man's fault, and that's not the truth. I'm not lying to y'all. Like I said, the Bud shit was bullshit. I told y'all that they would never sanction no fight, and they wasn't gonna make no fight like that. And I told you, if you thought that those two dudes was gonna ever fight, and I don't like to use that terminology. If you thought Bud and Bud and Gary Russell Jr. was gonna make an actual fight, you a moron. And I hate to say that. They was never gonna fight. They wasn't even gonna entertain the thought. Because I'm gonna tell you right now, if Al Heyman would have tried to get that fight made, Al Heyman would have looked horrible. And it would have looked like he set Gary Russell Jr. up. I don't care what Batman say. And I don't care what nobody else say and try to make it look like that Bud is ducking Gary Russell Jr. Like I said, if Bud was doing interviews with people, none of this would be happening. But like I said, these niggas call themselves being pro-black and all that type of shit. But then, like I said, these dudes then went after Bud and tried to set out and destroy him and destroy him. You know, basically trying to destroy a man's reputation and his career in front of mixed company. Whether we call ourselves having black channels or whatever the case may be, we know people that ain't black watch our channels. Yeah, I've been trying to tell people that you actually had niggas sitting up. See, one thing about me, nobody can't talk to me like I'm some kind of hoe. That's one thing. Nobody can call me on the phone and try to talk to me like I'm some hoe and try to pat me on the shoulder because I ain't nobody's hoe. And like I said, you actually had people saying why can't this fight happen? Come on, man, get the fuck out of here. Like I said, that would have been the end. Let me tell you something. If Al Heyman would have got that fight dead, he would have showed everybody that he didn't give a damn about Gary Russell Jr. He would have got Gary Russell Jr. seriously hurt. And you got people talk about, oh man, well he spar at he walk around at 140 and Bud walk around like at 160. Bud is clearly bigger than Gary. I done stood next to Gary Russell Jr. Gary Russell Jr. is about 5'4.5". I'm 5'11", and I was clearly taller than Gary Russell Jr. If that fight would have happened and y'all would have seen, Bud would have beat the hell out of Gary Russell Jr. He would have busted him up. He would have Gary Russell. I'm keeping it 100. I got love for Gary Russell Jr. Gary Russell Jr. wouldn't the last 5 rounds with Bud. Straight up. He wouldn't have last 5 rounds with Bud. It would have been a one-sided fight, and it would have been a joke, and people would have been saying, what the hell did we just watch? Okay, let me respond to that. First of all, Roy Jones Jr. is 5'11". 5'11". Okay. Okay. Stop it. Mike Tyson was 5'11". Ernie Shavers was 6 feet on the dot. So can we stop that shit? You talking about 5'4". You so like I said, if that's the case, they like I said, they got weight class for a reason. Okay. Well, like I said, if that's the case, then Chocolatito should go fight. Chocolatito should go fight David Benavides, and we'll see how that fight turned out for Chocolatito. If Chocolatito don't literally get killed by David Benavides, so please don't listen to people that's pushing that narrative. They have weight classes for a reason. If that's the case, then Bud should go fight Deontay Wilder. And we know how that would turn out for Bud. Can we stop it with this foolishness? Oh man, he didn't sparred. He didn't sparred people 106. Dude, you spar with 18-ounce gloves and you got headgear on. In some cases, they have body gear on. So like I said, they have weight classes for a reason. So if that's the case, then I expect Bud to be fighting Deontay Wilder. Well, look, man, Bud is a good fighter, but he ain't stupid enough to try to. Bud is not stupid enough to try to fight no Arthur Beterbiev. It's people at 175 waiting for Arthur Beterbiev to either retire or get old. So Bud ain't stupid. Bob Arum would never try to make a fight like that. And that's funny that you mentioned two top ranked fighters. I'm on here telling the truth. I ain't sneak dissing nobody. I'm just telling the truth. Nobody with common sense think Bud was ducking Gary Russell Jr. I mean, you kill your credibility. You come across as a fanboy of somebody or a nut hugger when you say shit like that. And I know most of us, and I'm glad the people that's listening to this stream got common sense. That's some fanboy shit. I ain't one of these dudes that sit up here and be all excited when I talk to these people, these trainers and these fighters, because they human beings just like me. Like I said, now we could push for a real fight. We could push for a fight with Bud versus Sean Porter because that fight makes logical sense. But come on, man, Gary Russell Jr. versus Terrence Crawford. Can we stop it? Can we cut the shit? Can we stop capping? People sitting up there saying, "Oh, Bud is running from Gary Russell Jr." that was so laughable. As you guys see, I didn't get caught up in that. As you can see, I didn't get. As you can see, I was the only one that said, "Man, I'm not participating in that foolishness," because that's what it was. It was foolishness. I wasn't participating in that because I like having the credibility that I have. I like for people to respect me and respect my channel. I wasn't finna be talking that stupid shit. I wasn't finna be sounding like a damn fool and talking about that Bud is ducking Gary. Man, come on, man. For real. I'm still waiting for Batman to get in contact with me. I'm still waiting for Batman to get in contact. He'll show up eventually. And one thing about me, if he do an interview with me, he ain't gonna be talking over me like he do everybody else. We gonna talk like gentlemen. Like I said, my channel is open to Bernie too. Because like I said before, people had this disdain. I want to get back to the Bud thing because I really want y'all to understand what's going on with Bud and people that's going to listen to this video later on. Like I said, it's a deep disdain for Bud because, you know, a lot of people was putting false narratives out about Bud, that Bud don't talk to black media and he this, he that. But the fact of the matter is, Bud just funny style with everybody. He funny style with everybody. And the thing is, nobody wanted to talk about what Batman said when he said, did you see what he did to Ellie Setback? Nobody wanted to talk about that. He did the same thing to Ellie Setback that he do to everybody. Like I said, Bud is just equal opportunity. And people wanted to put out this notion that Bud just do that to black media. But he did an interview with Brian Custer. Brian Custer worked with the PBC. He don't really do no work with Top Rank. And he black. So that was just a false narrative, but nobody said nothing about that. And then people want to, and I want to tell you something else that's pissing me off too that I got to bring to the light. A lot of people using what happened with me and Bud in Fresno a couple of years ago as an excuse to go on a We Hate Bud campaign. People been using what happened with me and Bud in Fresno a couple of years ago to use that as an excuse to bash Bud. But if I got over it, why is everybody else using that as an excuse? And I'm gonna tell you somebody else that was unfairly attacked. Once again, Andre Ward was unfairly attacked. Because when you think about, but that's the thing. That's the theme. People want to put out fake narratives about people. And people been using that shit as an excuse. Oh, we don't like, look, if I got over it and I say let it go, if I let it go, then let it go. But so what's the excuse now that Bud only do that to black media? He did that to Ellie Setback. Ellie Setback is a white Jewish dude. He a white Jewish dude. Well, it won't be 147. That's for damn sure. And it won't be heavyweight. I think it's just very difficult to get a undisputed when you have belts basically divided between two promotional companies. When you got promotional companies that don't want to make fights because at the end of the day, they don't give a damn about the fans because like I said, all these dudes is destroying boxing. The PBC, the Zone, Golden Boy, they all in they all in on it because they don't want to make certain fights. I'm just keeping it 100. They just don't want to make certain fights. They don't want to work with each other. I'm gonna be honest, man. I'm just gonna be honest, man. I miss the 80s, man. I miss the 80s. I miss the early 90s when you can actually get fights made. You know, after 2000, you know what I'm saying? Basically after 2005, you couldn't get certain fights made. Yeah, well, they've been calling it that. Smokeland. Yeah, I really miss the 80s. I really miss the 90s where for the most part, you can get certain fights made. But now you have this carousel of bullshit that's being thrown around. You had these promotional companies, and then you had these fighters at the same time trying to play these games with certain media outlets. Then you have media outlets that show clear bias towards promotional companies or certain fighters. But then they claim to be so pro-black. But then they go out of their way to try to destroy black fighters if they not doing interviews with them. Go figure. I mean, I mean, what are we? What are we doing here? Like I said before, if I told you all the PBC fighters that acted funny style towards me, would you feel the same about them? That would you have the same contempt for them that you have for Bud? I'm just saying. And this ain't about defending Bud. It's about telling. This is about telling the truth. It's about putting the truth out there. The sanctioning bodies, and that's another thing. The sanctioning bodies, they don't want to do shit neither. They can order fights, but at the end of the day, it still come down. It still come down to the promotional companies and the fighters and the television networks. They could work together. They could work together. It's enough money out there for everybody to make money. But it comes down to, oh, I don't want to work with this dude. I'm afraid I don't want to give this promotional company a belt. I don't want to make championship fights. Like I said, nobody wants to sign, and that's another thing. Nobody wants to sign rematch clauses anymore. Cause see, back in the day, this is just real talk. Um, a lot. I'm gonna be honest with you because I'm gonna give y'all some food for thought. Cause like I said, I'm 45. I'm about to be 46 at the end at the end of the month. Back in the day, the guys like Larry Holmes and Sugar Ray Leonard and Thomas Hearns, a lot of times they knew what they next 2 to 3 fights would be. They knew who they would be fighting next. They'd be like, okay, well look, if you beat this dude, you're gonna fight this dude next, you're gonna fight that dude next. It'll sort of be like a schedule. But now you got the PBC fighters where Al Heyman basically tell these dudes to start training and we'll let you know in a couple of weeks who you fighting. Well, who am I training for? Oh, we'll let you know later on. They'll let you know later on. Then they finally tell you, and then you like, I don't even know who this dude is that I'm fighting. You know. So see, that's the problem. People, PBC, like I said, it sort of ran like a, sort of like ran like a mom and pop store. It said with a lot of money. And the same, but Top Rank, like I said, Top Rank is more structured. But the problem is with Top Rank, the problem is they don't know how to promote their black fighters. But then again, the PBC ain't doing a good job to a certain degree of promoting certain black fighters. So once again, we at a stalemate when it comes to these fights. People just don't. I'm sorry. People don't want to hear the truth no more. Nobody don't want to hear the truth no more. No, for real. This is what I don't understand. Once again, I'm gonna get back to Bud and then I'm gonna move on to some other shit. Okay, Bud is such a horrible person for being on Top Rank, right? But why isn't Shakur Stevenson? Oh, I know. Because Shakur Stevenson give interviews. Like I said before, nobody put out a video talking about how Bud was condescending and ignored Ellie Setback. You know why? Because it kills their agenda and their you know what I'm saying? It kills their agenda and their image of Bud that he just a dude that only do this to black media when he do that to everybody. Because people don't have the guts to retract some of the stuff they say. I've retracted certain stuff that I've said. I'm coming on here being honest. I'm telling y'all the truth. I could have sat up there and played these games and said, "Yeah, Bud, don't talk to black media," and then I would have had people saying, "Hey, Tam, what's up with you not doing a video about how Bud dissed Ellie Setback? I'd rather me be the one to put the story out than some clown, some troll coming on my channel trying to call themselves putting me on blast. So that's just real talk. Like I said, y'all being deceived by everybody. And I'm sorry, Gary Russell Jr. and them kind of look bad in this situation, but Al Heyman look even worse. And I'm gonna tell you something else Al Heyman was trying to do. Al Heyman was trying to take the credit away from, the LDBC for basically trying to get a fight made. So that's another thing. He also was trying to take the credit from the LDBC because let's just face the fact, people don't like fights being negotiated through the media. Basically, if this fight got done, then people would have been like questioning these companies like, hey man, if this fight could get done, why can't other fights get done? So that's why he fell back on the fight. Now I think they're gonna be a trio talk, and they're gonna talk about it maybe later on. But me myself, like I said, I'm not finna be nobody's nut hugger, and I don't get down like that because, like I said, I was one of the only people that was talking about Gary Russell Jr. People didn't take an interest in Gary Russell Jr. till he made himself available to do interviews. And like I said before, Gary Russell Jr., whoever you believe, people saying that Gary Russell Jr. asked for a rematch or he had a rematch clause with Lomachenko, but based off what happened in the first fight, certain people prevented that from happening, or some people say Gary Russell Jr. didn't want it. And I'm just gonna be honest with you about Gary Russell Jr. Lomachenko. They should have had a rematch because Gary Russell Jr. did better than what people gave him credit for. It wasn't a blowout. It was a very close fight. And had Gary Russell Jr. got credit for that knockout, he would have at least, at the very least, probably got a draw, or he might have won a split decision. Remember, Lomachenko won a majority decision. But I appreciate people listening to what I had to say. I'm glad people wasn't being condescending because at the end of the day, y'all had the right to hear the truth. I'm not telling y'all to question anybody else, but at the end of the day, certain people got to be called out. I'm just telling y'all to be aware of people that's being fanboys instead of being a fan of the sport. I don't have to do no Kool-Aid smile because some professional fighter talking to me. What's up, Tim? I don't have to be sitting up here with a Kool-Aid smile. He. I just go in there and take care of business. Because at the end of the day, yeah, these dudes are on TV. They make more money than me, but at the end of the day, they not no more special than me. I'm just doing my job as a media personality and interviewing these dudes and talking to these people and putting it out for the fans and for people to listen to what these dudes have to say. Whether you believe them or not, it's up to you. Because like I said, I'm all about, love, and I'm all about us, you know what I'm saying? If not loving each other, respecting each other. Because like I said, a lot of these dudes sit up here once again, and I'm going to end it like this. A lot of these dudes claim to be pillars of the community, and they just as bigger frauds as the people that they like to call frauds. For real. How do I determine what questions to ask? I just come from the heart. If you watch my interviews, I wing everything. It's very rare that I write down questions that I'm gonna ask somebody unless I have a interview set up with them. I just wing it. I just ask what come to mind. Now, the lady that had a cosmetics company or the beauty care company, Skin by Ari, by the way, check her out. Basically, that interview, I wrote down the questions that I was going to ask her. For the most part, the interview went very well. Me, I just wing everything. You know, I just wing everything. That's the best thing to do. Me, myself, I've always tried to be myself. I never said I was Howard Cosell. I'm not Howard Cosell. I'm not Stephen A. Smith. And for God's sake, I'm definitely not Jason Whitlock. I'm me. And I'm gonna continue to be me. When you saw me interview Sean Porter last month, that was from the heart. You know what I'm saying? I just wanted to ask him some real questions. Now, there's gonna be certain questions that slip my mind because, like I said, you winging it. You gotta, you know what I'm saying? You gotta be quick, fast, in a hurry. And there's been plenty of times where I'll be like, oh man, I forgot to ask him that. Keep in mind, I just started doing this stuff. I'm not trained in this stuff. You know, other dudes, they trained in this they trained in this field. I don't have a degree in mass communications. I'm winging this stuff. It's learning on the job. I mean, I done got better and better, if I say so myself. For real. I'm just a regular dude out of Oakland, California. Real talk. So, you know, but like I said, man, I'm all about trying to, keep peace among us and shit, not divide us. Not because, this dude doing interviews, that dude don't do interviews with me. Just real talk. Like I said before, um, I feel Andre Ward, and I gotta say this. I feel bad about what happened to Andre Ward. And I want to call out something, and I got to make this clear. I'm not taking up for Andre Ward because he's from the Bay Area like me, but I got to call it like right down the middle. Where people say, "Oh, well, Andre Ward say he half black and he half white." Okay, so what? Andre Ward was raised by his daddy. You know what I'm saying? Until his dad passed away, and then his dad left him with Virgil. But like I keep saying, Andre Ward is down. Andre Ward is solid. Because once again, when you saw when the Gucci thing went down and Andre Ward called Gucci out on their racism, the Chalo brothers were still wearing Gucci stuff. Wasn't just Floyd, it was but people failed to mention that. They just wanted to say, "Oh, Floyd did it," but it was plenty of fighters. It shout out to Errol Spence though. Errol Spence called Gucci out, and it was other people, Adrian Broner, a whole bunch of fighters still wearing Gucci. Chalo brothers had on a Gucci shirt. Now I guarantee if you would have asked them why they still rocking Gucci and they was raised, I guarantee you they would have probably started cussing. They would have got all irate like they always do. Because once again, I was the only person, but everybody want to holler about how Bud treat people, right? But keep in mind, I was the only nigga that talked about how Chalo threatened Blue Bud, and Blue Bud is my friend. I was the only one that made a video about that. The only one. But keep in mind, but keep in mind, they everybody wanted to demonize Andre Ward, all because he said he just voiced his opinion. And let me tell you how fake people is. Shakur Stevenson said the exact same thing that Andre Ward said, almost. All Andre Ward said is, I don't think Deontay Wilder would want to go through that again. And it got turned into Andre Ward was a coon, a coward, and all that kind of shit. And got, and his name got dragged through the mud. But let me ask you this. Name one time Andre Ward didn't talk to black media. How many times did y'all see Andre Ward go out of his way to talk to me? Okay? How many times did Andre Ward go out of his way to talk to me? Even after that shit happened with Fred. How many interviews have you seen me do with Andre Ward? Okay? Also, Andre Ward could have been like, man, I ain't talking to none of y'all. Shakur Stevenson said the same thing. He said, man, he said that he thought Wilder lost that fight. Shakur Stevenson said almost the same thing. He said, yeah, Deontay Wilder dropped Tyson Fury in the 12th round, which, by the way, Tyson Fury got knocked out, but, Jack Reese, whatever. But did anybody attack Shakur Stevenson? Did anybody attack Shakur Stevenson? That's what I thought. But then you got these people hollering about they pillars of the community, but then they try to cause chaos among black people, the black community. Shakur Stevenson said the same thing. Well, what? What? Okay. I'm just saying. Shakur Stevenson said the same thing. So why wasn't Shakur Stevenson's name ran through the mud? But then people launched a fake attack on Andre Ward. And like I said, Andre Ward then spoke out way more about racism than anybody else have. When have these so-called pro-black PBC fighters spoke out about racism and white supremacy? The only one that ever did it was Wilder, who was very vocal, and Errol Spence to a certain degree. But none of the other dudes. Why wasn't it pressure on the PBC dudes to talk like that? Why Andre Ward had to become Malcolm X? That's what I thought. But anyway, thank y'all for listening to this stream. I'll be back later on. I really appreciate it. You know what I'm saying? I got love for y'all. I got love for the black community, the brothers and sisters. I'm out here. I'm real with this shit. Okay? I appreciate the love and I appreciate the support. You know what I'm saying? And my channel not for sale. I don't ask nobody for super chats. I don't do none of that stuff. For real. I'm not about that. This your boy Town Biz. I'm out.